It is late November 2025, and a commercial airliner is making its final approach toward Indira Gandhi International Airport in New Delhi. The pilots are steering through the dense winter air, relying entirely on their cockpit displays to guide them to runway 10. Everything inside the cabin seems completely normal. The altitude readings are steady. The coordinates on the screen show them perfectly aligned with the tarmac. But on the ground, air traffic controllers stare at their radar screens in alarm. The aircraft is not where the cockpit screen says it is. It is drifting miles off course. Within hours, 5 passenger jets and 2 heavy airliners are forced to abort their approaches and divert into the night. It is not an equipment failure. It is a deliberate, silent electronic attack. Counterfeit signals are flooding the airspace within a 60 nautical mile radius of the capital, overriding the internal computers of commercial planes. The scale of the disruption expands rapidly. In just 1 week, over 800 flights across the country experience severe positioning anomalies. Cockpit alarms trigger falsely. Pilots receive terrain warnings when flying over flat ground. The planes are physically safe, but their digital reality has been entirely hijacked. And this is not an isolated event. Over the past 2 years, similar anomalies have infected the skies over the eastern Mediterranean, the Baltic Sea, and the Middle East. Thousands of flights are being fed counterfeit satellite data by invisible transmitters on the ground. A technology that the entire modern world relies upon is being systematically compromised, turning civilian airspace into an electronic testing ground. This is the story of how the world's commercial airlines are being blinded from the ground. To understand how a passenger jet can be hijacked without anyone ever touching the controls, we have to look at the invisible infrastructure that guides global aviation. Above our heads, a network of satellites orbits the Earth. These satellites do one very simple thing. They continuously broadcast the time. A receiver on an aircraft picks up signals from 4 or more of these satellites. By measuring the microscopic differences in the time it takes for each signal to arrive, the aircraft calculates its exact 3-dimensional position. But there is a massive vulnerability built into this system. Those satellites are over 20,000 miles away. By the time their signals reach an aircraft, they are incredibly weak. They are fainter than the background radiation of space. If you look at the technical specifications of global positioning systems, the vulnerability becomes glaringly obvious. Overpowering a faint signal from space does not require a massive military installation. A cheap, commercially available ground transmitter can simply broadcast a louder, stronger signal. This is known as spoofing. Unlike jamming, which simply blasts raw noise to block all signals and causes cockpit screens to go blank, spoofing is an insidious art. The ground transmitter feeds the aircraft perfectly formatted, yet entirely false coordinates. The displays look completely normal. The pilots have no immediate reason to suspect that they are being lied to by their own instruments. Headlines across international media started catching the edge of this crisis in late 2023. In the airspace stretching from Cyprus down through Iraq, flights began experiencing strange anomalies. In one incident, a Boeing aircraft flying over the Egyptian capital suddenly showed its position as being stationary over Tel Aviv. Another passenger jet departing from an airport in Israel was suddenly confronted with a controller warning about an unauthorized approach into restricted airspace, even though the pilots knew they were miles away. The data shows a massive spike in these incidents. According to international aviation safety reports, spoofing attacks surged by 193% between 2023 and 2025. By late 2024, an average of 1,500 flights a day were being fed counterfeit data. The electronic warfare tactics used by state actors to blind drones and missiles in conflict zones were bleeding into civilian corridors. But for decades, the aviation industry believed it had a foolproof backup plan. Modern passenger jets do not rely on satellite signals alone. Deep inside the electronics bay of every commercial airliner sits the Inertial Reference System. This is a brilliant piece of engineering. It uses highly sensitive internal gyroscopes and accelerometers to measure every tiny movement the plane makes. Because it is entirely self-contained, it does not need to look outside for data. It is physically impossible to jam or spoof a mechanical gyroscope from the ground. If the outside signals were ever compromised, pilots were trained to rely on their internal reference system to guide them safely to their destination. The system was designed to be the ultimate fail-safe. But then, the attackers introduced a terrifying twist. They found a way to use the aircraft's own systems against it. In September 2023, a business jet was flying high over the Middle East when its satellite signals were spoofed. The pilots expected their internal reference system to take over. Instead, the internal system failed completely. The aircraft veered off course, nearly crossing into foreign airspace without authorization. The crew had to rely on continuous verbal directions from ground controllers just to stay in the sky. Aviation engineers quickly realized what had happened. Over long flights, the mechanical gyroscopes inside the internal reference system slowly drift. To correct this microscopic drift, the internal system constantly checks its position against the satellite data. The attackers did not just send wildly incorrect coordinates, they sent false coordinates that drifted very slowly, degree by degree. The spoofing was so subtle that the aircraft's internal computers accepted the fake data as real. The plane effectively fed the counterfeit coordinates into its own immune system, corrupting the unhackable internal gyroscopes. A coalition of pilots and flight technicians published a detailed warning about this exact vulnerability. They explicitly stated, IRS should be a standalone system, unable to be spoofed. Yet the reality in the sky proved the opposite. A prominent university researcher studying the phenomenon remarked, "This is like a zero-day exploit against aviation systems. The failsafe was broken." This brings us back to the skies over New Delhi in late 2025. The spoofing attacks hit the capital precisely when the airport was vulnerable. The main runway was undergoing upgrades, meaning the ground-based instrument landing equipment was temporarily offline. Pilots were forced to rely heavily on satellite guidance to align with the runway in poor visibility. By broadcasting false coordinates from the ground, unknown operators forced the entire aviation network to rely on manual, high-stress interventions. Air traffic controllers had to guide massive passenger jets entirely by voice, creating extreme congestion and safety hazards. The fallout from these invisible attacks has forced a rapid reckoning across the global aviation industry. Government regulators, from the Directorate General of Civil Aviation in India to international safety boards, are scrambling to establish new protocols. Airlines are continuously updating hotspot maps, warning crews to switch off satellite inputs entirely before entering known spoofing zones. Engineers are rushing to patch the vulnerabilities in the internal reference systems, attempting to teach the computers how to reject poisoned data. But the broader implication of these attacks extends far beyond delayed flights or diverted planes. We have built a global society entirely dependent on invisible, perfectly precise timing and positioning signals. From international finance networks to the power grid and the flight paths of thousands of commercial aircraft, everything assumes that the data falling from the sky is true. The recent surge in spoofing proves that this invisible infrastructure is incredibly fragile. The technology that was designed to bring absolute precision to the modern world is now being weaponized, turning civilian airspace into an electronic battleground where the basic concept of location can be erased with a single switch. Thanks for watching this video. For similar stories, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.